Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for the week of July 3rd, 2024. Happy 4th of July to all those in America that celebrate. Hope you don't lose any fingers and that your pets are all safe. It's the thing around our house. We're not big fans of fireworks because we have dogs that aren't fans of fireworks and they just get all wound up and trembly and stuff. It's not good, but anyway, great week of DC books. I guess it's fair to say Absolute Power kicks off in earnest this week with issue 1, which has, if you guys all had a chance to look at or watch my interview with Mark Waid or listen to it, it has an incredible line from Batman that kind of sums up what's going on. And, we've talked about it a lot about the feel, how's the event going to feel, and the dichotomous feel of it. It feels sort of like this classic DC event, but also like this villain spotlight, and obviously Amanda Waller, a very divisive character. So I was kind of wondering how I would feel, and if possible, it makes me despise her even more. Just the the arrogance, the hubris. And we'll talk about it more when we get to the issue, but God, she's just such a despicable piece of shit that I don't think even John Ridley at his best is going to be able to do anything to make me feel sympathetic or empathetic toward her at all. I just don't see it. She's just like, I cannot accurately describe the level of hate I have for this character. Like, she just deserves to be tortured for all eternity and suffer for all time. She's such an arrogant piece of crap. Like, I just can't stand her. She's just awful. There's no other way to put it. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah.
And other than that, I mean, there are some decent books this week. I'm going to be curious to hear Rocky's thoughts on a couple of them. A little bit of an up and down week, but definitely some that I really enjoyed, and some others that it wasn't that they were bad comics, but it's more kind of tangentially why I should care about them. So, but we'll talk about it when we get there. How'd you feel about the week overall, Rocky?
I thought this was, for me personally, I felt this was a down week for me. I don't say that with a great deal of passion or with, I'm not going to be really ranting. It just felt really blasé. There's only one comic I liked this week, and that was Absolute Power. I didn't actually enjoy really any of the other ones, really. Some of them were okay, but it felt very... if I'm honest, it's because it was such a great week for indie comics. It this week more so than a lot of weeks, I have to say I felt the superior quality of the independent market a lot this week, and I think that's just by coincidence. It would just happen to be a great week for indie comics, but the mediocrity of DC has really hit me, and I love Absolute Power. I thought it was good, and we'll talk about that. But just the overall mundaneness of everything else has sort of hit me this week, and there's positives there too. And I'm gonna try not to be a negative Nelly, but it's just I don't know. Maybe I was just a little bit down this week. Although I did have a great week, and just a shout out to my fellow Canadian listeners out there. July 1st was Canada Day, so. Happy Canada, belated Canada Day to Canadian listeners, and certainly for tomorrow, July 4th, to our American friends, happy 4th of July. So,
Yeah, definitely wish happy Canada Day to all our friends north of the border. I'm going to sound like a stupid American right here. I'm going to ask this question because I think somebody was pulling my leg. I was asking a Canadian who's lived here for a long time now, like 10 years or so. And I was like, is Canada Day like this similar to the 4th of July? Like, she's like, oh, you mean America Day? And we should call it America Day. It sounds better than 4th of
well,
July.
Canada Day represents on July 1st, 1867, we had the British North America Act, which formally made Canada a sort of a nation a nation independent of Britain. Not with respect to our foreign policy. That didn't happen until around later, but basically that's when we became our own Dominion. We became the Dominion of Canada in July 1st, 1867. And we called ourselves the Dominion of Canada because if we called ourselves anything else, we didn't want to offend the Americans by calling ourselves an empire. So we were a Dominion. Because we can't offend America.
But I mean, my question is more about tradition, right? So right. 4th of July, Americans think of fireworks probably number one.
Yeah, we have fireworks. Very much so. We have fireworks on July 1st. Yes.
Yeah, and we also we grill a lot of hot dogs and hamburgers. We eat a lot of watermelon. By the pool. But my Canadian friend, she's like, yeah, we do all that stuff. We go out, we have these picnics, and there's usually a contest of chugging, we exchange maple syrup and then we chug it to see who can drink the most. And she said it with such a straight face, and I didn't believe her, but she stuck to her guns and said, yeah, we chug maple. That's not true, right?
Well, I've never done that, and I've never witnessed anyone do that. And Canada Day celebrations, I've never seen that in any Canada Day celebration. Not to say that we couldn't start doing that, but
okay, so it's not a thing. I'm gonna.
And also, if you try to jug maple syrup, it doesn't come out of the glass very fast.
yeah, true maple syrup. I guess maybe if you heated it up, it was hot enough. But anyway, let's get. People are like, "What are we talking about here?" Actually, this does remind me. Let me one more tangent before we get into the books. So I interviewed Matt Kent and his mother, of all people, the other day. They have a project. They have a book, a 3-issue series coming out from Dark Horse. That's this murder mystery. His mom is so interesting. I had so much fun talking to them. And the reason I bring it up, it reminds me here, we're talking about stuff, that's not comics, Canada Day and America Day and whatever. The fun thing was, after I finished doing the interview with Matt and his mother, stopped recording, she was asking questions about why I do what I do and some of that sort of stuff. And we ended up having this 10-minute or so conversation after the official interview. That was a lot of fun, just talking about life and how we got into collecting or whatever. And Matt loved it so much. He's like, you need to put this in. This is the bonus content or whatever. And so just a peek behind the curtain, everybody. So I actually double record when I'm hosting an interview. I double record it. I record it in Zoom, but then I also recorded in OBS. And I had stopped the Zoom recording, but I had OBS was still going. So I did actually have it. So if you do, if you're so interested, or so inclined, go check out that interview with Matt and his mom. It's a lot of fun. They talk about the book and the choices they made and the twists, and they don't give anything away, but it's a lot of fun. But if you do watch it, stay after the outro, because then you'll get the little 8 minutes of bonus content with Matt talking about the way he used to pay for his comics when he was a little kid, how he destroyed his G.I. Joe 1. He had a G.I. Joe 1 when he was a kid. He completely destroyed it. I won't spoil it, but go listen and you'll find out. But us talking about this non-comic stuff reminded me of that. So, it was a fantastic chat with them, and they're going to be at San Diego Comic-Con. I've met Matt before. Obviously, I've never met his mother, but I'm looking forward. I'm more looking forward to meeting Matt's mother in person than I am of seeing Matt again, because she was just so awesome. But okay, well, let's go ahead and dive into the books. Boy Wonder number 3 is the first book we're going to talk about, or Boy Wonder book 3, I guess I should say. Black Label book, focused on Damian Wayne. Junie Baugh writes and draws it, colored by Chris O'Halloran. Aditya Bidikar on the letters. Junie Baugh did Monkey Meat, I think was the name of it, for Image. It's a bit of an acquired taste when it comes to the art style. And it feels like, it's a Black Label book. It's out of continuity. It doesn't really feel like anything happens where it has to 100% be out of continuity. I mean, the Bat books right now, Batman and Detective Comics don't line up at all. But what have you, it is out of continuity. Like I said, it feels like it's supposed to be an exploration of Damian Wayne and sort of him learning and growing. He seems a little bit immature here, but not in a bratty way, just more like in a lacking life experience sort of way, which is okay. But I didn't really feel like I got a lot out of the first 2 issues of this series. I feel like I got a lot more out of this third one. So this third issue, really felt more like a complete issue where I got a little more um, of a feel of who Damien is. Again, I think it's a story of him growing, of him, realizing who the rest of the Bat family is and how they have something to offer rather than being kind of an arrogant punk. So I did enjoy that, but overall, Juniba's really gonna have to stick the landing for me to say that this was a successful series for me. Because while I enjoyed this issue, it is, as I said, sort of a stylized art style that's not my favorite. And you can see it kind of right on the cover of this one, where we get a look at Red Robin, or the Tim Drake version of Robin. That's who he's teaming up with here. He's got the giant pronounced beak. Like, it looks like an old Native American, like Indian sculpture, like the way they used to draw eagles and what have you. And this is a robin or a red robin, or you could even say a drake, right? What the name that Brian Bendis tried to give to Tim Drake, that which is a male goose, I guess, who are actually very formidable. Thank God that didn't stick because it's a dumb name. But either way, this doesn't look like a goose either. So yeah, the art style is okay. And this did rise to the level for me of being an above average comic. I did enjoy it. Whereas the first two issues were just sort of a chore to get through. So I don't know, maybe it'd be one of those situations where the collected edition or the trade reads a lot better. I still don't think that I'm necessarily the target audience for this. But I did appreciate this issue more than the previous issues. That's all I'll say. I mean, if Rocky wants to get into the story, that's the thing about this. The story has been sort of an afterthought in a lot of ways, and sort of choppy. I feel like that's not where the strength of this series is. But anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rock?
Well, this definitely, it feels out of continuity for me. And but I will give Junie Ba some credit. He's is it a he or she? Do you know yet?
I think it's a he. Let me double check.
Okay, well, I'm assuming it's a he. I apologize if I'm got the wrong gender, but I actually like that Lex Luthor is in here, yep. Veronica Cale, Maxwell Lord, and they all have their net worths here, which are stated, which are kind of cool. This is a gala put on by Oswald Cobblepot, and I thought it was kind of funny. And at one point where this gala's going on, they have statues of all the heroes except the Batman statue is missing the head. Of course, Oswald Cobblepot's putting on the gala. Batman's missing the head, so you can see there's little things like that Junie Ba will put into the story that I got a chuckle out of. I actually enjoyed this. Out of the first three issues, this is by far the best one for me. I actually thought that Damien is he's writing Damien as he was before the Robin series by Williamson, and I realize this is probably out of continuity, but if I was going to put this in a character continuity for Damien, I would say this is the Damien character before Williamson did the Robin series, where he matured a little bit more in my mind. And so in that respect, I actually thought that this relationship, I enjoyed reading about this relationship between Damien and Tim Drake, if for no other reason that, for some reason in my mind, and other readers might disagree with me on this, but I don't recall a lot of interesting stories between Tim Drake and Damien. I remember there's a lot of between Dick Grayson and Damien, and even Jason Todd and Damien. I don't recall a lot of Tim Drake Damien stories, but that might just be me. Other people might remember different stories, different strokes for different strokes. But I actually thought I actually enjoyed this story. I thought it was actually well done. The art's growing on me. It's kind of stylistic. I agree with. I actually like the style. I mean, you mentioned the beak thing with Tim Drake. I actually like the sort of. It almost has like an American Indian kind of style to it. Like it looks kind of cool. I actually kind of like the beak on Tim Drake on Red Robin there. I know it has nothing to do with a Robin, but frankly, I don't care. I mean, he stands out more pronounced, and he has I actually hope that sticks, that style, but maybe I'm in the minority on that. I don't know, but overall, I thought it was interesting. Damien's character evolution or his realization at the end, where he comes upon the Ra's al Ghul. There's a Lazarus pit in the building, which I didn't quite understand why, but he's trying to reconcile the lessons that he's learned as Robin, the son of Batman, versus what he learned as the son, as the grandson of Ra's al Ghul, and he's got the influence of his mother Talia. So Juniba is actually, he's doing some character development here that I think it's working. And I will admit that my reluctance to get into this story has to do with the art, and the timing of it. And I know that might sound a little unfair, but I just wasn't ready for this type of style or story at this particular time. Perhaps if I'd, I have to be in the right frame of mind for this particular style and story. And that's not the fault of Junie Boss. So having said that, I do think I probably need to, in fairness, maybe give this a reread from beginning to end, maybe just when my head's in a different place.
Yeah, I'll probably do that as well. Because again, I think it might read better as, in its entirety. So I'll hold off on that. I'm not going to go back. I want to say it's 4 issues, but I'm not 100% on that. Let me look real fast. I think it's worth taking the time to find out. So yeah, it looks like actually 5. Yeah, 5 issues. So we got 2 more to go. So yeah, may have to reread the whole thing after the 5th issue comes out in September. We'll see. Okay, up next, longtime listeners of the podcast, you've heard us say this 1,000 times, if not more. A book being late kills its momentum. Absolutely kills it. Even when you have a book that is on a bi-monthly schedule, like Doomsday Clock went to a bi-monthly schedule because, oh, look, same creators couldn't stay on the schedule. It's hard to remember. It's hard to keep momentum. It's hard to keep excitement because it's so long in between. And maybe for Rocky and I and people like us that read a lot of comics, it's a little harder. Maybe if you're a huge Justice Society of America fan, you're rereading this, you remember what's going on, whatever, it sticks in your mind. You don't read a lot of books. But I mean, 2 months, 3 months, what? I don't even know how long. Like, I don't care anymore. I'm sorry. I love Geoff Johns. I think he's a fantastic writer. I like these characters. I like the premise. The art is gorgeous, but I just don't care. I just don't care. Like when I constantly am seeing updates. Oh, last 2 issues of Justice Society pushed back again. Don't even tell me, because I literally do not care. It's not possible for me to care less anymore. Because it doesn't matter. It's taken so long. This book has been coming out for 3 years now. We're on issue 10. That's 3 issues a year. That's just, the word that comes to mind is inexcusable, right? And I get that Geoff Johns has moved on. He's got his own Ghost Machine over at Image and signing everybody to, it's kind of telling, right? Like he's signing everybody to these exclusive contracts. And basically they have a vested interest in the company, but the contract says that Ghost Machine work comes first, right? Like they're not allowed to go and do covers for anybody else, whatever, unless all their Ghost Machine obligations for the month are met. That's kind of telling to me. Like, why do you need to put that in there? Like, shouldn't people be professional and be, taking care of their obligations? Well, you would think so, but apparently not. And I did misspeak. This book's been coming out it hasn't been 3 years yet, 2 years. But issue 1 came out November 2022. So in a little less than 2 years, we've gotten 10 issues. So 5 issues a year. That's less than one every other month. And it's not like they're double sized. They're regular 20-page books. So rant over what have you. Written by Geoff Johns, Mikel Janin and Marco Santucci are the artists, Jordi Belair, Yvonne Placencia, and John Kalis on colors, Rob Lee on letters. I mean, it took, I don't know how long for this book to come out. And there's still 2 artists on it. So, Yeah, March was issue 9. So 3 months for one issue, 120-page book, and it has multiple artists on it. Like, I don't know what else to say. Um, it is kind of cool to see the Legion of Substitute Heroes as rendered by Mikkel Yanine. It's great to see the Gentleman Ghost, who's always been a favorite villain of mine, just because he looks so cool. Uh, again, the story's not bad. This idea of Mordru, who's a classic Legion of Superheroes villain, having gone back in time and trying to redeem himself, much like Huntress is recruiting these former villains or even current villains and trying to reform them because the Justice Society of America that she had in her part of the DC multiverse that apparently no longer exists after the defeat of Paradogaton, but her Justice Society was it was filled with these villains who had redeemed themselves, and so she wants to feel like she's still fulfilling that mission. She's still doing something of worth. She's trying to recruit these villains, Harlequin's son and Icicle and Mordru. She didn't recruit Mordru, but voted for him to be on the team. Solomon Grundy, and feels like, hey, this will be worthwhile if I can get these guys to fight on the side of the heroes rather than the villain side. So that's an interesting premise. And again, I wish this came out on a monthly basis, and I wish it was on time because I love it. I love the story. I love the idea of it. I love the Mikkel Yanine art. The Marco Santucci art is very, very good as well. But again, I wish that it wasn't like half. It's not quite half and half. It looks like Mikkel Yanine does pages 1 through 12, and then Santucci takes over his page with page 13. And the Legion of Superheroes does show up at the end and tells the Justice Society, "Hey, you cannot do this with Mordru. Like you're going to destroy the future basically if you do this." And it's a fantastic double page spread from him. That's the other thing, right? Like, it's 20 pages, but you have 3 giant double page spreads. So it is a very, very much a quick read. And that's not to say that that it's quicker for the artist. It actually takes probably longer doing these giant double page spreads, because there's one of the Legion of Substitute Heroes. There's another double page spread that has the JSA, and then there's the one with the Legion of Superheroes at the end. So yeah, in terms of the story, it's interesting. It's fun. I want more of this. I want more of this story. I want more of this creative team. I want more of this setting. I want more of the kind of the tone and the feel that this book has, but I don't want it, once every 3 months. And we know we're only getting 2 more issues, and it's going to go away. I will once again renew my desire to say, hey, DC Comics, don't end this, or whatever. You're going to end it, right? Because then you get a new number one, the most minuscule of sales bumps that a number one gets nowadays. But I think a Justice Society book, it can continue to build off of this story that Johns has created. But DC, just give us Justice Society on a monthly basis. Get Marco Santucci to draw it, which is fine. Get Jeremy Adams to write it, please, for the love of God. Like, he's worked with Geoff Johns before. The idea of what Geoff had, the missing Golden Age characters, the Flashpoint Beyond series that Johns wrote, that Jeremy Adams co-wrote, and then the Lost, was it Stargirl and the Lost Children that Jeremy was aware of, and then his Flash series, his Jay Garrick Flash series, which dealt with what was her name, Judy Garrick, who's one of the Lost Children. I say all that to say Jeremy knows what's up. He knows what's going on. He knows even the behind the scenes stuff that we readers don't even know. He would be the perfect person to take over or to relaunch Justice Society again. Marco Santucci. I mean, my thought here, maybe part of the delay, like I've had to guess, beyond Geoff being late with the scripts, would be Mikkel Yanine is helping out on the Absolute Power series now, so it could have been a situation where Santucci had to come in and finish this book because Mikkel Yanine was just behind, and Yanine needed to move on to Absolute Power or whatever. I still think 3 months inexcusable or what have you, but it annoys me because the series is so good. but it is hard to care. It is hard to care. This will be another one that, hey, maybe I'll read it all together when it finishes up. But on the other hand, it's part of me feels like, not to sound entitled or whatever, but just so let down by this creative team, that like, why should I bother to invest my time? Like, I'll read the single issues as they come out and just enjoy it for what it is. I don't want to go so far as to say they don't appreciate their fans or whatever, but in a way it's a little bit disrespectful. Like, you agreed to do it. You signed a contract. Just get the book out. Just get the book out. I don't understand. I really don't. I mean, this is like shades of 1990s Image. It's a really bad look. It's incredibly bad look for everybody involved. It's a black eye for DC in my mind. It's a black eye for these creators. And partly because Johns is over there putting out all sorts of content for Ghost Machine. I get it. Like, he's more invested. He makes more money off that stuff or whatever. But hey, man, finish your obligation over here first, or at least in a timely fashion, instead of the books just getting pushed and pushed and pushed. Again, bad look for all involved. So I don't know. Anything to add on that front, Rocky, or just give us your thoughts on the book?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of both. You get the bonus comment. Look, I love the All-Star Squadron, and I've always I got into comics when I was 6 years old with Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. And this is, my God, this is the Legion of Superheroes. This issue ends with potentially a battle between the Legion of Superheroes, who have come back in time because the Justice Society has made the catastrophic mistake of agreeing to let a young Mordru, who is the arch enemy of the Legion of Superheroes in the 31st century, to join their ranks. And the Legion of Superheroes have popped back in time to the 21st century and said, no, if we have to fight you, we will, but you cannot do this because the future depends on you. Can't let Mordru join the Justice Society. And the Justice Society is on this kick because the Huntress wants to recruit all these villains, and she's a multiversal outlier, and she's an outlier just like Power Girl, and she's on the Justice Society, and they're recruiting all these present day villains who one day might be anti-heroes or heroes in the future, but not in the present. This is a recipe for chaos. In other words, it's a real cool story. And I want to be invested in it, but I can't because DC doesn't want to tell the story in a timely fashion. And I don't know what's going on. This actually feels, I hate using the word political, but it feels like it's like DC doesn't like Geoff Johns, or Geoff Johns doesn't like DC. They got their potentially their best story here. I'm far more interested, if objectively, I'm more interested in this story than Absolute Power, hands down. But I can't say that because this story will never end. My prediction is that Justice Society, this story is going to end in September, and we're going to get a revitalized Justice Society post-September, along with the rest of the mainstream DC universe, alongside an Ultimate DC universe. And then how this fits into continuity, I don't know. But I got to tell you, this is... I love the idea. I love the idea of Mordru, how, Mordru actually ends up stealing the life force from Hawkman and putting it into Gentleman's Ghost to actually make him alive again, give Jim Craddock life, knowing that Hawkman will resurrect himself into another life. And as much as that pisses off Carter Hall, he doesn't care. And then so Mordru is willing to take extreme measures to do some good, but is his moral compass, is it still on straight? Is he on the side of good? Is he just playing a long game of manipulating the JSA? We don't know. This is precisely the type of story that Geoff Johns is really good at telling, but we know that he's not telling it past issue 12. An issue 12, are we going to get that before September? I'm guessing we will, but who knows? So, like you, we continue to have our frustrations with this title, none of which are related to the content because the story is interesting and it's worth reading. However, it's a double-edged sword because it's like, I want to promote this book. I want this story to have some consequence. But on the other hand, does DC care? Does DC actually care about this story? Does the DC care about the consequences of this story? Because nobody is talking about it. Certainly not Geoff Johns. He doesn't care anymore. That's painfully obvious. DC's not talking about it. Everything's absolute power and Amanda Waller. But yet, on the surface, when you think that the Legion of Superheroes used to be as popular as the X-Men, how far they have fallen, and now they're relegated to a JSA book that comes out once every 3 or 4 months. My God, how it's just so sad. And yet still, despite that, it's something that we enjoy reading. But unfortunately, we just don't get this type of quality storytelling enough. But it is what it is. I love the issue. I'm really looking forward to a battle between the JSA and Legion of Superheroes if that takes place. But I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah, I don't ever remember seeing the Gentleman Ghost in his normal form. He's always been the Ghost. I've never seen him in his human form. So I don't know. Yeah. Maybe first appearance of Gentleman Ghost actually alive. So yeah, it is a really fun story. But God, it's so hard it's so frustrating to care and hard to remember what goes on. But yeah, you're right. The Legion, it feels like DC squandered an opportunity because you're right. They were as popular as the X-Men at one point. Okay. Next up, we have Kneel Before Zod, issue number 7, written by Joe Casey. Dan McDade is the artist, David Barron on colors, Troy Petrie on letters. What were your thoughts on this one?
Joe Casey, you interviewed him. I mean, he was all about making returning General Zod, I guess, to his roots, making him evil again, and well, he's definitely done that. General Zod is an absolute evil zealot again, but he's evil with no, he's evil but with no compass. He's all over the place, and he still feels all over the place. And in this issue, he just continues to do battle against the Emerald Eye. Unfortunately, what I hoped was going to be a purpose or a focused story vis-a-vis General Zod and the Emerald Eye, the Emerald Empress. Rather, it's just a battle, and the Emerald Empress ends up escaping this prison ship that Zod's on, and then Zod freaks out and kills one of the prisoners because, apparently General Zod is as insane, as evil as he has become now. Apparently he seems to be surprised that a bunch of prisoners aren't, that a bunch of prisoners aren't blindly following him because he's Zod. And I understand that General Zod is crazy. I guess he's upset and he's frustrated and I get it that he feels alone and he's trying to find a purpose and he's angry, but I want to see some struggle, but I want to see his struggle to try to find a purpose as opposed to him. He doesn't feel like he has one. He's just being pushed along and moved along by a plot that doesn't seem, in my view, to be going anywhere. The events are pushing Zod. Like Zod's on this. Zod is defeated. Zod wakes up on a prison ship. Zod takes over the prison. Zod wakes up. Zod freaks out. He takes over the prison ship. And then a prisoner breaks out and then attacks Zod, and it's the Emerald Empress. And we have a battle this issue, which takes up the whole issue. And then she exits the ships. And then he kills one of the prisoners as a show of strength. And then at the end, all of a sudden outside the ship, Sinestro shows up. I don't feel that this Zod, I'm not impressed with this. I was really hoping to be, if this is elevating, this is taking Zod, stripping him away from so many elements that made him interesting. If he was also evil, he would have a planet, he would have minions, he would have soldiers. Now, Zod stripped himself of those things. Why? It was Zod that got rid of the planet. It was Zod that stripped himself of the power. It was Zod that put himself in the situation that he's in. And for what? To just wander aimlessly on a prison ship on the outskirts of the dark sector of space? I've lost respect for Zod's intelligence. This guy was a military general. This guy knew what he was doing. No military general would give up a tactical advantage at edge that he gave up in the early parts of this series. Now, and if he's grounded in grief, if he's lost in grief, and he's lost his whatever his compass was. I guess I know that he's hallucinating, talking to Jor-El, and so I guess that's the explanation of the reasoning. But I just feel that I'm not really sure that I'm not sure exactly where this is going. And now next issue, he's gonna have a conversation with Sinestro, cue pointless battle, and then what? Sinestro has a planet, and Zod's going to be wandering aimlessly again. I don't know. Maybe this is heading toward a reunion. Sinestro will tell him about his son, because Sinestro ran into his son, Sin Sun, and Lord Zod on his planet. We reviewed that in the Sinister Sons last week, I believe. So I guess we might be getting something. There might be some reunion there of sorts. That will be interesting. But as far as Zod's character arc here, I wish I understand what Joe Casey was trying to do, but it's just fallen flat for me. He can still get it back. I'm going to cut Zod some slack, but it's lost some excitement for me. I look at Zod now and I feel sorry for him, and not in a good way. I don't look at Zod and say, oh, he's a cool, evil badass now. No, he's just an angry guy who gave up all the power he had. What kind of if a crazy evil villain gives up the power, he had an entire planet filled with an army, and he's pissed off and he gives all that up, and only to run a ragtag group of prisoners on a ship and spends half his time either sleeping with the prisoners or killing the other half. I mean, it just, honestly, if I'm really being brutally honest on this, this is kind of a hard villain for me to respect. And it's just not there for me. But I know that you've been far more kind to this transformation than I have. So what do you think of this issue? Oh, sorry, you're on mute, my friend.
It is interesting. And one of the things that we could say about this series, whether it's working for you or not, you have to admit it's been unpredictable. Like, you haven't been able to figure out where Casey's going. And in a way, that might not be a good thing, right? Like, we sort of were a little critical about it to begin with, because it just felt so strange. And I talked about the fact, like, okay, Zod has been after what he's been after, since Krypton exploded, a new homeworld for his people. And he achieved that here, and his wife is still nagging him. And I'm like, how long does he have to be an evil bastard? Hasn't the guy earned a chance to maybe take a step back? And his wife, oh, you're not the guy I married, whatever. Like, well, that guy was a guy that was like singularly focused on getting a homeworld for his people, and then he accomplished that. Doesn't he get a chance to mellow out a little? And then just as we're discussing that, then the homeworld is attacked by the Coons and destroyed, and Ursa's killed or whatever, and yeah, you feel sort of bad for him, but at the same time, in a lot of ways, everything that he had been was stripped away by Joe Kelly, and think of it as like a new beginning for Zod. And so this is almost like a story in two acts. So, we had the first act where all that stuff that happened on his version of New Krypton or whatever, and Lord Zod, we know, is sort of been banished, I guess is the word for it. His wife's dead. He's got nothing anymore. He's untethered. And Casey could have done anything with the character. And what he chose to do was to say, okay, well, he finds this prison ship, and he takes it over as his body regenerates, and the Emerald Empress happens to be there. It all just feels a little strange to me. To make this, again, unpredictable, if you want to, I don't have any idea where the story's going to go. And there is definitely some of that here, but sort of interesting, right? Sort of an interesting choice. Like, why Emerald Empress? And then why is it a situation where Sinestro shows up? I mean, Zod versus Sinestro, obviously that's the Solicit or whatever. I think there's only one issue left of this. And so Zod versus Sinestro, well, yeah, that sounds fun. That sounds classic. But how does that how does that resolve the story? How does that give us an ending? Because it's felt like it's meandered a little bit ever since Zod has been on this prison ship. So issue 8 is the last issue, and I'm looking forward to an epic battle. And again, I would say Joe Casey's done a interesting job of making this series unpredictable, and he has succeeded in my mind of returning Zod to his villainous roots. But it definitely feels like the series could have been a little more tightly focused. But again, maybe you do that and it doesn't it doesn't have as much context, because one of the things that we did kind of give it credit for was it did feel like this was a series that that maybe had more emotional resonance than any previous Zod story. So I think that probably works in favor of it in a lot of ways. So yeah, I don't know. It's been an interesting ride, and again, I'm looking forward to the battle between these two classic villains. But it's definitely been a story of two acts, if you will. And the first act made sense in terms of returning Zod to his villainous roots. The second act, less so. But I don't know that necessarily means that it doesn't work. I think a lot of it's going to hinge on where Zod ends up at the end. But it definitely feels like no matter what happens in the next issue, it's not going to be the end of the story. I feel like, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me speculating.
Well, you actually, some of your comments actually made me realize one of the things that I think is missing here, and that is that I wish there was. Zod is just so angry and upset that I wish there was more of an indication that, I mean, he lost his wife and his son is not around and he's lost his wife. And I get that Zod is the type of character the way he's grieving is through anger. And when you feel a loss of control from grief, you grasp onto those things that you're most in control of. And for Zod, that's probably his power set and his anger and his vengeance and he's lashing out. He wants to blindly become the control freak and the conqueror that his wife wanted him to be. I get that, but I wish I'd see more of that. It's not really coming through, for me anyway, in these later issues, because I've almost forgotten that he's lost his wife. I've almost forgotten about Lord Zod in a way because of all these focus on prisoners and all this. I think, Joe, I feel like the parts of the narrative that I was most invested in was the emotional connection and that sense of loss, how that loss for Zod would transform him. And I've lost that connection between Zod's current behavior and the loss of his son and his wife. And maybe if I felt more of that in the story itself. And, as I say, there's still some issues left and we can maybe get that. And Joe Casey can maybe nail the landing for me. But I'm just not quite feeling that emotional connection that I had at the beginning that you astutely pointed out.
Yeah, well, again, it goes back to this idea that, maybe that's exactly what we're seeing. Zod is so angry and he's so like, he has returned to his roots. I'm going to do whatever I want. Nobody tells me what to do, whatever. And it's all the anger and this return to more of what I'll call the dictatorial, the would-be dictator version of Zod. That is a direct result of him having that loss. The problem is, and like you're pointing out, where we lose the emotional resonance of it, the problem is, in a way, Casey's almost done his job too well, right? Like, you want to return Zod to his villainous roots. This version of Zod just feels like the classic version of Zod. So it's not any different than, the old school, Bronze or Silver Age stories where Zod was just a bastard. And so it's sort of hard to separate. Like, you look at who Zod is now. Oh yeah, Zod is Zod. Zod is the classic Zod now. And I don't know how you would do it. And I think it would be a real challenge to bring him back to his roots, but like you said, still have the connection to what he lost, so that it was more obvious. Like, somebody picking up this issue right here and who hadn't been reading the series at all, like, if they just pick up this issue and they're reading it or what have you, and they wouldn't know anything about him losing his son, losing his wife, whatever.
I know.
a classic Zod fan, this is just Zod
Yeah.
being Zod. So yeah, how do you do that? How do you return him to the classic version of Zod, but still try to honor what what came before in this story? I think it's an incredible challenge. It may, I mean, I don't want to use the word impossible, but it might be, it might be that we're asking for something that is just not able to be done, at least not in the limited real estate that you have in a comic. So anyway, interesting dilemma.
Yeah.
Let's move on. I was kind of interesting to hear you say you really only like one book this week, because Birds of Prey 11 is out. You've been a fan of Kelly Thompson and a fan of her Birds of Prey run. She writes this issue. It's issue 11. We've got Robbie Rodriguez, Javier Pina, and Gavin Goudry on art, Jordan Blair on colors, and Clayton Cowell on letters. Worlds Without End, part 3 of 5. What are your thoughts?
Well, I've been on the last, actually over the last few issues, I've been more critical. Since issue 9, actually, the second arc of Kelly Thompson, I've been, it hasn't quite hit for me. I feel that it's dragged on, and I feel that the plot line hasn't really captivated me. And I feel that not much has happened. I enjoyed the first arc, but I was really hoping that there'd be some payoff in this so far. And so far, I got to say that there isn't. I feel that this is very tropey. And I just want to, first, I want to give a shout out to the different artistic styles of Robbie Rodriguez, Javier Pina, and Gavin Goudry. Gavin Goudry is his art is probably my favorite style of art, so I want to give a shout out to him. And the fact that the other two artists, Robbie Rodriguez and Javier Pina, I think all of them combined together to do a actually decent job, despite the fact that there's 3 artists in this comic. I think that the coloring, I continue to have. I love the color. I admit I've been like a cardiogram. I've been up and down on the coloring. I love the color, the duller color palette at first, and then I'm not sure if it's grown on me, or if I'm not sure how I feel about it now. But it's definitely different. This is definitely a more of a unique looking comic book than. Probably the most unique feel and the most unique looking comic book that DC has in terms of the color palette and how it genuinely affects the story itself. And in the way I guess it narratively fits in with the story is that the Birds of Prey they're hopping from dimension to they're in a dimension where they're portal jumping within a dimension, and every time they go through a portal, whoever goes through the portal first, whatever it is they're thinking affects the environment that they land in. And in this particular issue, I believe it was I can't remember, one of the characters, it might have been Meridian not Meridian, sorry. Was it Cassandra Cain that thought of dinosaurs, and they end up in this dinosaur land, and this new character May is with them, and May's sister, she had 7 sisters, and May's sister is responsible for kidnapping Barbara Gordon, because in the future these group of sisters, the sister of this new May character believes that the Birds of Prey are responsible for the death of their mother, specifically that Barbara Gordon is responsible for the death of their mother. Unfortunately for me, the reason why it's not quite working for me is that it feels very decompressed, and they're just hopping from environment to environment, and they're not hopping from environment to environment in the DC universe. So I think I hate to say this, but I know Kelly Thompson doesn't know a lot about the DC universe. This might be a little bit harsh, but I guess if you don't know anything about the DC universe and you're just learning, it's a good and easy cheat to actually really, you're 11 issues in, and the only thing you need to know about 11 issues in is, well, they were on Paradise Island and they did a bunch of fighting in the jungle on Paradise Island. That's all you really need to know there. But here, all these environments, you have the entire multiverse, and instead you want to create your own dimension to come up with these diverse different environments, and nothing happens. Just nothing of significance happens. This entire issue was a bunch of dialogue with no substance, which in my view, it doesn't really tell us a lot. We have John Constantine show up, and I'm not really sure, why? And then we have, it's just a show. it just, I don't know where is this going, and I don't feel that I'm not excited reading this. Straight up. Is there anything inherently wrong with it? No, it's just kind of boring and meh. We still don't know. There was this made up connection between the red and time travel. Okay. And then we still don't know anything about the villain. And I already know that I'm not interested in the villain because it's these made up seven sisters and May, and somebody wants Barbara Gordon dead. And there's no indication that it's related to any future of the DC universe that we're aware of. It feels out of left field. I was really hoping for more of a connection to the story itself. It's not captivated me the way that I really wanted it to. I will say that at the end, at least finally, it looks as if Vixen is now established some connection to the Red, and at the end, the villain shows up and wants to, is going to confront them again. But again, they're not any farther ahead than they were 2 issues ago. 2 issues ago. But they're still just fighting. But last issue we got sort of a quickly shoehorned together origin of who the villain is, and I'm actually very disappointed it's a new villain. I actually you got a whole echelon of DC supervillains, and you made up one that was kind of, I don't know, kind of meh to me. Again, is there anything inherently wrong with this? No, and I want to be clear. This isn't like a bad comic. It's just for me, this comic. It doesn't need me buying it. I am buying it. I'm buying every issue. I love Kelly Thompson. I subscribe to her Substack largely because you got me onto that, Jace. Thank you for that. I love Kelly Thompson's work. And rumor has it she might be writing Wonder Woman, and I'd be looking forward to that if she writes it. But I think it's just this plot because I like Kelly Thompson's plots. I loved her Captain Marvel. I credit her with thinking outside the box quite a bit. But in this case, thinking outside the box, I don't like the the sandbox she's playing in here that she's given herself. And that's not a criticism. That's maybe just my preference. But again, it's sort of almost like General Zod in a way. I don't feel like I'm not really excited as to where this might be going, and I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to get excited about, and I just don't care that Barbara Gordon might end up being killed by whom. This villain doesn't seem particularly intimidating to me. It doesn't feel like there's a lot at stake to me, and I'm undoubtedly in the minority on that. I know a lot of people love this comic, and Kelly Thompson, I still love you. Just this particular a line of plot is just not my cup of tea, but maybe you feel different.
Well, first of all, it's dinosaurs, but it's not dinosaurs like we see in Jurassic League, right? Like that's dinosaurs that just feel like they're just in there for the sake of being in there. At least these are like real dinosaurs. They're not cartoon versions of dinosaurs, and dinosaurs are cool. And I think that the relationship aspect of the story, this idea of these characters and their interactions, is still where the story shines, and it's one of the things that Kelly Thompson is best at. But you're not wrong in saying that at least in this particular issue, the story sort of doesn't go anywhere. You're not wrong in saying that. It does suffer a little bit from this I don't know, lack of pacing maybe is what it is. And I also think the artwork doesn't really do it any favors. I have not been a fan of the muted color palette from the beginning. I haven't cared for it. I've been pretty vocal about that. I just don't care for it. I think the story would be better served if it had, brighter colors and felt a little more, if the colors just felt a little more vibrant, if the art itself just felt a little more vibrant. So yeah, I like yourself. I'm still a fan. I still think Kelly Thompson is a brilliant writer. And again, there's value in the story, at least for me, in terms of, hey, the relationship aspect of it is interesting. This idea of this former Barbara Gordon Batgirl villain wanting to get back at her. It's sort of a classic feel as well. So there's a lot to like here, but unfortunately, it does feel like we're taking a little too long to get where we need to be going. And yeah, I just wish the art was the art style was just different, but that's just a personal thing. So for me, average to maybe ever so slightly below average issue for this run so far. But it's hard for me to point at this comic and say, it's dragging on, it's taking too long, it should have been wrapped up by now. When we have a cool dinosaur issue and Barda fighting dinosaurs, because that's just cool. Sometimes that's really fun. But again, if the artwork, like if this was Mikhail Yanin drawing Barda, if Mikhail Yanin was drawing Barda fighting dinosaurs, that would just be fantastic. So anyway, up next we have Absolute Power #1. Highly anticipated, highly promoted from DC. Obviously, I had Mark Waid on a couple weeks ago to chat about it. It's written by him. The art is by Dan Mora. Colors by Alejandro Sanchez. Letters by Ariana Mayer. Yeah, like I said, despising Amanda Waller, but it definitely is an impactful issue. So I'll let you go first. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just collecting my thoughts here. Well, let me see. Just a minute. Trying to. So, you mentioned before, you referenced your interview with Mark Waid, and I did listen to it, and I'm very glad I did. He teased a lot of things, Mark Waid, and he's the most interesting comments he made is what he alluded to with Green Arrow, which you said was interesting. There's very clearly some what this issue does, this opening gambit, this opening issue for Absolute Power #1. It really shows just how much planning Amanda Waller has done. And basically, in a nutshell, she's barricaded Earth, she's barricaded the multiverse, she's sealed the time stream, she's sealed the macroverse, she's rendered magic useless. Anyone who tries to use magic will forget how to will lose their memory. She's hacked the World Wide Web. She's got a secret frequency. She knows the secret frequency used by the former members of the Justice League, thanks to Green Arrow betraying the League. And of course, Green Arrow appears to have genuinely betrayed the Justice League and the Titans and the rest of the heroes. And it appears as if the powers they're never coming back. It looks like Failsafe is 100% been successfully reprogrammed by Amanda Waller. We know that the Brainiac Queen is someone who's been literally raised by Amanda Waller over the past 20 years in computer time, or in the matrix of the computer world. And at the end, we have John Kent himself losing his memory, and we have Superman being shot and dying. Literally dying from a gunshot wound, all by the end of this issue. And Batman coming to the realization that, oh my God, while I was busy dealing with all those crazy things, while I was busy with Gotham War, dealing with Failsafe, dealing with the Batman of Zurana, while I was dealing with all of that, Amanda Waller, who I always thought I was playing chess with, she's not playing chess, she's playing for keeps. And Batman quickly surmises, because all the heroes in the world are being attacked, and there's a massive information propaganda war against the heroes that is successfully making it look as if all the superheroes, anyone with metahuman powers, is seen to be attacking, or perceived by the society as attacking all innocent citizens all over the world. And so heroes are being portrayed as the villains. And this is in keeping with the events that DC has had. And as much as we weren't fans of Night Terrors, we weren't fans necessarily of Dark Crisis. Maybe Beast World was okay, but even if we didn't like Beast World as much as we could have, the fact is that the result of all those events, it's like the Buddhists say that the bucket fills drop by drop. All of the citizens of the world have been slowly propagandized and brainwashed by Amanda Waller into believing that, the world is getting more and more dangerous because of these heroes, and the bucket the bucket fills drop by drop. And when the bucket finally tips over, what emerges is Amanda Waller, and it appears as if she's got the power of the White House behind her. She's manipulated clearly the president. She's clearly in control, or seems to be in control of even the sovereign, or the what do you call it? The Bureau of Sovereignty. Amanda Waller has played her hands very, very well here, and the same powers that she used to. We found out that she used the Time Commander to reprogram the Amazo robots to basically become Task Force. I guess Task Force 12, is it?
I think it's 7.
Is it 7? Task Force 7, sorry. And with 7 Amazo robots representing the various powers of the core 7 of the previous Justice League, Wonder Woman powers, Aquaman's powers, Superman, Batman, etc. And all of this has come to a head, and this issue did a really excellent job of just hitting the ground running, because I felt this felt epic, and this didn't feel compressed. And what I felt that this was, you don't need, I'm happy to report, you don't need to have read any of the last how many years of issues for the buildup of this. Other than the fact, and we've said this before, and people will agree with me to varying degrees, that is that if you can't accept the fact that Amanda Waller is the one behind this, that if you can't accept the fact that Amanda Waller pulled this off, and I'm not entirely convinced, but I'm buying into it because I enjoy the story more by just, buying into it. It's actually a pretty cool story. And Amanda Waller's motivations aside, this is pretty epic. And this, I got to say, this is the first time in a long time for DC that this actually feels like an event. It does feel a little different. And it actually does feel that there are significant stakes. I feel that there's a lot at stake here. I feel that. And I am genuinely curious that, how are the heroes going to get out of this? Because she controls the multiverse, she controls the time stream, the macroverse, the magic, sorcery. She controls everything. And if the heroes have really lost their powers, how in the hell are they going to combat Amanda Waller? How are they going to come back from this? And, Batman manages to discover that she's utilizing the power of a mother box to essentially, hack the internet and control a lot of things with the mother box. And Batman is going to try to organize a heist with Catwoman to try to steal the mother box. But I'm thinking to myself, who cares if you steal a mother box? How is that really going to help you? Because so what if you got the mother box? I mean, when you look at everything else she's in control of, Amanda Waller really does seem to be, literally 10 steps ahead of everything. Now, I want to say one other thing here, and this was alluded to by Mark Waid in your interview, which is an excellent interview, by the way. Was perfectly teased on some of the comments. But, I got to say, all the bitching in the real world, I'm one of the guys that has complained about the lack of excitement in the Titans comic. They haven't done a very good job replacing the Justice League. It's very clearly going to be an in-store. And when this is all said and done, when Absolute Power is over, there's going to be a lot of people, I would think, that are going to look to the Titans and say, hey, Titans, you failed us. You replaced the Justice League and you did a real shitty job while you were fighting the environment. While you were, saving trees in Borneo, Amanda Waller was orchestrating the takeover of the entire planet. What the hell were you doing? And I got to agree with that. I agree with that criticism. I know it's harsh. I know the Justice League has failed before, and other heroes and other groups have failed before, but it's already, if you just think ahead, I'm thinking of the dynamics that are coming into play. Once Amanda Waller's defeated, what's going to be the fallout? What's the Justice League going to look like? Are the people even going to want the Justice League to return, given the fact that this happened because they left the playing field? Do they even want the Titans to return? I like what this is setting up. I like what's happening in my own head canon. I love the questions that I'm asking. I'm excited for this. And a lot of this, I admit, was spurned on by your interview with Mark Waid. But that's what those interviews are supposed to do. And that's what these comic books are supposed to do. Get me thinking about it, talking about it. And I wish more people were talking about this online. I think more and more will. I hope that's the case. And I'm not even, I mean, this was an easy pick for me for pick of the week. I'm sorry, but it just was. I love this. This was really, really good. You know, it was a great week for indies, but this issue I loved, and I'm really looking forward to where this goes, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Oh, you're on mute.
Damn, I don't know how I keep getting put on mute, but anyway, I have a little bit of a harder time buying into the premise than you do, I think. Again, you know, I've said it a ton. You got to accept what editorial tells you. And if editorial's telling me, well, yeah, Amanda Waller pulled this off, then Amanda Waller pulled it off. And that's where, you know, again, I have to accept that. The problem is, and where it falls down a little bit for me, is that I have a hard time buying into the fact that these heroes who have been heroes for a long time and have saved the earth and have saved various people, you know, time and time again, that Amanda Waller could just put out these deep fake videos and people would believe them, that they wouldn't go, you know, to the internet or somewhere to try to find out, hey, this stuff is not really happening. Like if you're, you know, seeing it on TV or whatever, and, you know, one of the villains is one of the heroes rather, is supposed to be in a particular place, killing, you know, particular people, whatever, and you happen to live in that place and you look out your window and you say, that's not happening. And then you're going to get out there on social media and you're going to say, yeah, I don't know why this appears to be happening, because I certainly don't see it happening. We don't see any of that. Like that's the part for me where I really have a hard time. It's like, really, people, you know, for lack of a better term, people believe this bullshit. Like that's where it falls apart a little bit for me. Like it doesn't have any, I guess, verisimilitude, right? Your word. So that's the part where it falls down for me. Now, in turn, setting that aside, if I just look at this in terms of, okay, you know, is this a great story or whatever? When the heroes realize, because you're not wrong, Mark did tease it about the lack of a Justice League, and the heroes talk about it. It's been mentioned before. Yeah, what are you gonna do? Call the Justice League? Well, there is no Justice League. So did the Titans fail? You know, we could debate whether or not they should have known this was coming or what have you. But even Batman himself, you know, he's like, I thought Waller was doing one thing, disinformation, propaganda, whatever. Turns out she's rolling tanks. And that was just like such a great moment in the book. One of those moments where you just go, oh yeah, you know, once it all comes together, Batman realizes what's going on. It's like, well, they're in deep shit. And it goes back to something else Mark said when I talked to him, and that's, he wanted to leave it at the end, you know, not a traditional type of cliffhanger at the end of this first issue where the heroes are in trouble. No, the heroes have, in a lot of ways, already lost. Like this feels like a little bit of a lost cause for the heroes. They are really in that bad a shape, especially because according to everything we know in this issue, these new version of Amazo robots, when the powers are taken away, that's it. You don't get the powers back. They're gone for good. They're gone forever. So that's really interesting to me as well, and everything that bodes for the heroes. The last thing I'll say is the other thing that's a little bit hard for me to, I guess, to accept is this idea of Green Arrow. Now, when I talked to Mark about this, I was like, yeah, I just feel like, you know, Green Arrow, he must be playing the long game. He's got to be trying to, you know, fool Waller or what have you. And again, Mark's answer was very telling. He said, I think it would be very hard for somebody like Amanda Waller, who has all these mind readers and telepaths and you know, all these other resources at her disposal. It would be very hard for somebody to trick Amanda with, where she's at right now. That's a very good point. That's a very good point that Mark makes. So then the question becomes, okay, well then why would Green Arrow side with Amanda Waller? And at various times in the past, Green Arrow has been sort of the liberal hero, I guess you would say. And it makes you wonder what he might be willing to do, how he sees the other heroes. They're not, but that's like going back to, the 70s hard traveling heroes version of Green Arrow. He hasn't really been that. He hasn't really been the whiny, I don't get along with anybody, arguing with the quote unquote establishment of the Justice League. He hasn't been that in a long time. So that does feel like it doesn't quite fit. As much as I'm trying to buy into what Waid is telling us, I just don't see Green Arrow, especially because, like, we're to the point now. I'm not even actually sure. I think his wedding to Black Canary, I think it was erased or whatever. But still in a relationship, she's got superpowers. He wants her superpowers to be taken away. So yeah, I mean, it remains to be seen. Maybe Mark was red herring when I asked him about it, and it's not really going to be a situation where Green Arrow is truly on Amanda Waller's side, as much as it seems like he is. Maybe he asked somebody to brainwash him so that he wouldn't, betray. Who knows? There's any number of things that can happen. It's comics. But if he really is just on her side, I just have a hard time buying that. It just doesn't feel, it doesn't have a feel of truth. It doesn't feel like it would happen to me. And yeah, so overall I enjoyed the, again, if it were somebody else, like take Amanda Waller out, and replace Amanda Waller with Maxwell Lord, I would be enjoying this more. There's no doubt, especially because it goes back to what you were saying about being able to buy into the fact Amanda Waller could do this, right? Because she does seem awfully powerful, but she apparently has no superpowers, but she was able to do this even to the point where the White House is trying to stop her, trying to release, have their own press release. And Amanda's like, no, we control all the airwaves. We control all the broadcasting, whatever. Even the White House is not able to get a message out. Like, I don't know, man. All that just seems wildly unlikely. But again, you take her out and you replace her with Maxwell Lord. We know Maxwell Lord has, powers of mind manipulation, whatever. It would make more sense. Yeah. But be that as it may, if this gets Amanda Waller off the table for an extended period of time, like I've said, then I'm all for it. Plus, it is, I feel like it's been a while now. I feel like the Leviathan event, as terrible as that was from Bendis, was really kind of the last straw that really showed Amanda Waller is not a hero at all anymore. She's just a despicable piece of shit villain. This is saying it really out loud. Like, in case it's not clear, DC fans, this person is a villain. She is evil. She is a scumbag. Innocent people are being harmed. There's no doubt of that. And I'm not even talking, like, we see Animal Man and his daughter get attacked and beaten here, and Animal Man's in the hospital, even though if he's going to survive. He's an innocent person, but I'm not, like, set that aside. There are innocent people that are going to be harmed in this, because she's rolling tanks. There's going to be violence. There's going to be Amazo robots out there. There's going to be mobs of people, setting fire to things, whatever. Like, people are going to be hurt, both physically, financially. Like, yeah, this is, and it's all in the interest of protecting the innocents. Amanda Waller's putting innocents in danger. There's no doubt of that. And the other interesting thing, last thing I'll reference that Mark talked about, was this idea of a want versus a desire, right? Like, if versus a need, I think is what he said. So if Amanda feels like she needs to get all these heroes off the table to protect mankind, then once that's done, once her mission is accomplished, then she's done, right? Like, no more setting situations up that could potentially harm people in one way or another. But if it's a desire, if it's a want, it's just inherent in us as humans, right? I want this thing, and if I get this thing, then I'll be satisfied. Guess what? You're never satisfied. And that's Amanda Waller. So you want to take away the powers of everybody, all the superpowers of everybody on Earth. Okay, if that's what you need to do and you accomplish it, then you should be like mission accomplished, the world is safe, not going to be harmed by superhumans. But if it's I want to protect innocence and that's my want, and I want to be the one that does it and have power and blah blah blah, then you take away all the powers of the superhumans, and then what's next? Well, now do you have to be in charge of all the governments of the world to make sure that people are making the right decisions for their citizens? Do you have to be, Queen Queen Waller, because you don't want people declaring war on people? You don't want genocide. You don't want African tribes fighting against each other. Like, where do you draw the line? If it's a want, she'll never be satisfied until she's like dark side level ruling apocalypse, right? And that to me is like her potential. Except she's anywhere near as interesting as Apocalypse, because she's just a human black woman, and doesn't seem like she should again have this ability to have this much power. That's where it falls apart. So anyway, a good start, interesting story. I'm super excited to see where it goes. I know that we had said that Rocky and I would probably do separate episodes for Absolute Power. It hasn't really felt like we needed to yet, but when we start getting into all the tie-ins, then that might be the case. We might separate it out because, if you're listening, there's a lot to break down in this. We've obviously talked about it for a long time. So, all right, let's go ahead and move on. Up next, we have, this one should be relatively quick, actually, by Jeffrey Brown. It's Batman and Robin and Howard Summer Breakdown. Colors are by Savannah Breese. This is the sequel to the Batman and Robin and Howard that we had previously that was in the DC YA. This is being released as a traditional comic, 3 issues. There's not a lot to say other than it's very much in the same tone and feel of the previous Batman and Robin and Howard, which was great for young readers. It's very easy to read. It's very easy to follow. I hope there's a lot of young readers that pick up this book and enjoy it. There's little funny bits and moments here. The relationship between Robin and Howard feels very authentic of 2 young boys. Batman is certainly the kind of the awkward dad version of Batman here, which is really fun. Alfred is more like the lovable grandfather, if you will. So it's definitely aimed for younger readers. It's a lot of fun. The art style is kind of fresh and simple. I enjoyed it. I'm curious to see how it all comes together. I do think that the first volume does read better together as a trade. So it is interesting, or as it was first released as a YA graphic novel, it is interesting they're choosing to release this one as 3 single issues, because again, I just think because the story is a little more simple, because it is aimed at younger readers, that having it all together in one probably makes for a better read overall. But yeah, this is a lot of fun. Great art. And, Jeffrey Brown, I got a chance to meet him and talk to him last San Diego Comic-Con. Fantastic guy, big DC fan. So, this is really great. What do you think of it, Rocky?
I'm sure. I guess it's obviously for a younger crowd. It's interesting. I'd be curious to know who this is competing with. Is this trying to compete with Dogman? The dialogue is more sophisticated than Dogman. Dogman is definitely more for children. Of course, I don't understand the success of Dogman. I think it's horrible. So I don't understand. I honestly, I can't remember I can't imagine myself ever as a 6 or 7 year old kid reading Dogman. So I don't understand this young 6 or, not that I'm supposed to be able to understand 6 or 7 year olds, but I guess that's the struggle with selling comic books to a younger crowd. You never know what's going to hit. I hope this hits. This is absolutely better than I've read some issues of Dogman, and I don't get the appeal straight up. And this one at least has a sensible plot to it, but the language is more sophisticated. It talks about environmental impacts. The actual language and the wording is more challenging for younger readers, and I think would be a little bit more educational, because I think that's the way you're supposed to write a comic. Write it. Don't be afraid to write it for adults, because kids will still read it. They're always up for the challenge. So I like this. I'm cheerleading this on, and I just hope I hope it sells well. I would love to see what the sales are for this. I hope they're doing. I hope it's good, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I've never read any Dogman. My daughter, I think, has a few of them, but she's not really super into it. So I can't really speak to that. But I remember her. She really liked Captain Underpants. I remember that. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's very similar to Dogman. So anyway, let's move on. Speaking of for younger readers, My Adventures with Superman. This is issue number 2, written by Josie Campbell. Pablo M. Collar is the artist. Colors by Nick Filardi. Letters by Lucas Catoni. As Josie said when she was on the show, this is sort of the Christmas episode. It takes place between season 1 and season 2 of the My Adventures with Superman cartoon, which is coming back on Toonami, I believe, later this year, or may already be out. I think it's later this month, actually. But anyway, then the next day they're available on Max, on the streaming service Max. So I really enjoyed this issue. If you watch the first season of My Adventures with Superman, you're going to see a lot of characters that are familiar to you. You're going to see Task Force X talked about, although it's not the Suicide Squad that we're used to seeing. You're going to see Deathstroke. You're going to see the what's it called, the Parasite robot or what have you, which is really interesting. And I mean, again, Josie Campbell's highly involved in producing the show and what have you. So it makes sense that the characterization for these characters would feel very much like the characters from the cartoon. So it's really great because I enjoy this version of it is a different version of Clark. It is a different version of Lois. That being said, I enjoy this version of these characters. I enjoy, this version of Jimmy Olsen, who's a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. And in this issue, when they're going for a tour and they're going to try to rescue the robot, Jimmy's actually not allowed into the army base because he's made so many. It's not YouTube, but the sort of DC equivalent of the YouTube, and saying, yeah, they've got mermaids and they've done this and they've done that, with all of his crazy conspiracy theories. So it adds a different dimension to Jimmy. Also, the art's fantastic. Pablo Collar really does a great job of kind of imitating the style of the series. And again, this version of Lois Lane, a lot of fun. So if you're a fan of the cartoon, you're definitely going to be a fan of what's happening here in this comic. So, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's not for me. I don't like the iteration. I don't like the setup myself. It's not my cup of tea. But I can't deny the fact that whenever I watch it in bits and pieces on YouTube with YouTube shorts and what have you, and it's always entertaining, and it's absolutely loyal to the cartoon. And the cartoon, my understanding, is successful. It's got a strong following. Josie Campbell understands the assignment. You know what I mean? And this is a very accurate reflection of Clark Kent. One of the things that stands out in this issue is I should clarify, when I'm not a fan of I don't like the fact that Lois and Jimmy know Clark's identity. I'm not a fan of that. It actually takes me out of the story to really, really enjoy it. However, that doesn't mean I can't recognize good storytelling. And one of the things that's done really well here is Josie Campbell does a good job of saying how Clark Kent can relate to the guy in the suit who doesn't know. Yeah, doesn't know how powerful he is, and he's afraid of all the power that he has. That he's someone, he's scared of who he is, and I think there's good character work here in only 2 issues. Some really good character work that quite frankly, one of the things that I thought really worked well when the original Batman animated series came out and then Superman animated in the Justice League, those comics were really good too. In fact, there's a lot of those Superman animated comics are written by Mark Millar, and a lot of those classic Batman animated, of course, are written by the names elude me right now, but just Mark Burnett and
Paul Dini.
Paul Taney, thank you. I mean, so this is Josie Campbell. She can really make a name for herself here if this cartoon continues to take off. I mean, this is good storytelling that is faithful to a cartoon adaptation that people love. 20 years from now, there's going to be people that are going to be looking for, assuming comic books aren't dead in 20 years, which of course they won't be. 20 years from now, people are going to be looking back, and they might. Their understanding of Clark Kent and Superman might be this iteration of that mythology, which is very interesting. So, on the one hand, I mean, the power of a good story that people will remember, and so kudos to Josie Campbell. It's because she's true to form here.
Yeah, that's a good way to. That's a good way to put it. So. All right, let's move on. Up next, we have Shazam, number 13. Speaking of Josie Campbell, she's writing this one as well. Mike Norton handles the art duties, Trish Mulvihill on colors, Troy Petrie on letters. Definitely feels like we've entered a different arc, and it is Where in the World is Billy Batson Part 1. But Billy shows up in this issue, so it's kind of interesting that it, kind of framed it as this story about, hey, Billy's missing, where might he be? So, what do you think of this?
It's all right. It's all right. I wish there's clearly. I was hoping for more conflict between Captain Marvel and Billy Batson. I was hoping for more conflict here, and right now this story is focused on where I don't know if I quite understand exactly what it feels wonky because of the Rock of Eternity and because of and this is a problem with all stories that are based on magic, and this isn't Josie Campbell's fault because frankly Mark Waid had the same problem, I thought, even with the Lazarus storyline there, Lazarus Planet storyline. Whenever you deal with magic, it's always a little bit wishy-washy because writers can basically do whatever they want and they can justify it by saying, well, it's magic. And here with the Rock of Eternity, I'm not really sure what the rules are for it. And I'm not really sure what the secret is that well, let me give you an example. Billy Batson ends up waking up in an old subway, and he says, where the heck am I? And Captain Marvel, I guess in his head, is telling him where the Rock needs to be, because I guess the Rock of Eternity is a nexus of magical power fundamentally tied to the magic of this universe. What does that mean? And I'm not really sure what we're supposed to, how that really ties into the story. It feels a little bit, I'm trying to get a handle on this story. I feel that it wants to say something that's maybe fanboy cool, and maybe I'm just missing it. But I will say that there's a lot of great. Josie Campbell does a good job of incorporating all the members or most members of the Shazam family, and I like that. I actually really like seeing Freddie Freeman finally, Captain Marvel Jr. We finally get to see him at the beginning. And Mary Marvel, and there's a lot of action here. I actually really enjoyed the art here. Mike Norton did a great job as an artist. The coloring by Tricia Mulvihill, colors really pop off the page. In fact, it was just looking at this issue, it makes me realize how much I wish Birds of Prey had Tricia Mulvihill bright colors. And I say that with great respect because I know that Jordie Bellaire was doing the colors for a lot of the issues on Birds of Prey, and she intentionally used the muted colors. I like the bright colors. I definitely like the brighter colors. And this is definitely an issue that I think really, really shows that off. And also, Uncle Marvel shows up. I don't even remember much about Uncle Marvel. I forget a lot of I forget how he's related to, is he actually an uncle? I actually forget. I'm going to have to Google the character. I didn't have time to Google it, but I really kudos to Josie Campbell. I have no problem Googling old classic DC characters. It's been a long time since I saw Uncle Marvel, so I'll be doing that. So she knows how to get my attention. I wish I had more of a handle on the magic of it. But this is the type of comic that even when I feel a little bit off put, it's joyful and fun that I want to get. I actually want to Google stuff after I'm done reading it, and I haven't been able to do that. So I wish I did, so I could give a more informative review. Perhaps you can help me with that. I like this new potential character slash villain slash maybe hero with the spray paint. I was hoping it was Primer. Stopping the. I would have loved if this was Primer's debut in the mainstream DC universe. You know, using her paints to stop the subway train, but it looks like it's not her. It's somebody else wearing with magical spray paint. And I thought, hey, that's not fair. That's supposed to be Primer's power using paint, but this is a spray painter. So. But in any event, it ends with King Kull showing up, and I'm sure King Kull is a classic Captain Marvel villain. So interesting. Again, I'll have to just be Googling this introduction of all these classic characters. Again, Josie Campbell is... I wasn't expecting this. I just don't know where... I don't know where it's going. And while that's normally a good thing, I just wish I had a little bit more of a handle as to what's actually going on. She's keeping too much plot-wise, too much close to the chest. I like a little bit more revelations. I don't want this to drag out for 4 or 5 issues only to find out that, what was the big secret that Captain Marvel is. Is it really that big a deal that you can't tell Billy about it right now? I hope it's something significant, because if it ends up being, if it ends up being silly, then I'm going to be probably a little bit more critical of the story overall. But right now, it's entertaining, but a little frustrating for me. But the art's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it, right? Entertaining, but a little bit frustrating. Because you're right. Like, so often we talk about series where there's some central mystery, and if you drag it on too long, it just, it harms the story, it removes momentum, people get frustrated. And yeah, this is running the danger of doing that. If you read it on the surface of just what's happening, just the action and the story beats or whatever, like you said, it is entertaining. It is fun. But the backstory, the part like, okay, but why is this happening? Why why is our Billy and Captain Marvel or Shazam or whatever, why are they separate now? Like, what's going on with that? Is the stuff with the gods, truly over? We don't have the answers to those questions. So you have to wonder, what exactly is going on. And we just don't know. We don't know enough at this point. So I agree with you. Having Freddy as more of a character that has more agency, I think makes the book better. The art, like you mentioned, from Mike Norton is fantastic as well. Bright colors. Yeah, I mean, it's Shazam. It should always, it's Captain Marvel comic. It should always have bright colors. It should always have a little bit of a classic superhero feel, and this definitely does. So I am enjoying it, but yeah, I'm kind of along those same lines as you. It's like, I want to be sure that this book continues to answer questions and not just create more questions and answers, I guess is the best way to put it. So we'll see how it plays out in the end. And as far as those villains, I don't know if those villains have been seen before. I guess it's possible, but it's also possible that Josie just made them up. So I guess we'll see. All right. Up next, we have Poison Ivy, chapter 24. I guess that's the name of the issue. I couldn't find any other name. Written by G. Willow Wilson. Art is by Hanning. Colors by Arif Prianto. Letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. Not a heck of a lot happens in this issue. There was a bit of a cliffhanger last issue where it seemed like Poison Ivy was dead. Well, they are in Slaughter Swamp, which is the home of Solomon Grundy. Solomon Grundy, we know, born on a Monday, dies on Saturday, reborn on the following Monday or what have you. So basically, he takes Poison Ivy's body and she is reborn, for lack of a, better way to put it. And when she's gone, she speaks to somebody, some sort of entity, or it's almost like some afterlife version of the green, of the Parliament of Trees or what have you, and she remarks on it after. Not to any of the other characters, not to Harley, not to Janet from HR or whatever, but she's thinking to herself, who were they? It seems like Jason Woodrow is really gone, but what price might I have to pay? Because they do sort of scold her for using the mushrooms, for turning the Lamia spores, for weaponizing them, I guess. So I don't know, maybe it's some sort of new, it's not the red, it's not the green, it's not the, what is it? The black, that's death or whatever. It's some different, the gray or what have you. So I guess we'll find out what that is. The other thing that G. Willow Wilson did, like, I sort of feel like maybe when she wrote that, like, this was supposed to be a 12-issue series. And then when she planned it out for her next 12 issues, did she wonder if she was going to get more than they extended it. It was supposed to be 12. They extended it to 24. Did she think, well, they're probably not going to extend it again or not truly keep it ongoing? Because this 24th issue felt so much like the end of the series in a lot of ways. Like it's set up where it could have been the end of the series. Yeah. That I went and I looked, like, is there a 25? Is there more after that? There is a 25. It's, I don't want to say an anthology, but it's a situation where it's a bunch of different stories from a bunch of different creators, and sort of a celebration of who Ivy has been over the years. And then there is not a solicitation for 26, but as far as I know, this is going to keep continuing. But it was so interesting that so many things got wrapped up. Like, we know that Janet from HR and Poison Ivy slept together, and at one point it was kind of brought up every so often that it was a thing, that, a secret between Ivy and Harley. And then we know that Janet and Ivy kissed, and that was, a secret, whatever. Like, that's all out in the open. Janet kind of has this moment where she sort of loses it and confesses to that and what have you. So yeah, there's a lot of little moments in this issue where it felt like, yeah, this could be the end of the series, but that's not the case. It is going to continue on. And as has been the case throughout the series, it just feels like G. Willow Wilson has an incredible grasp on who Poison Ivy is as a character. She just does a fantastic job with Poison Ivy, and I think as long as that continues to be the case, the series is going to continue to be successful. So, what were your thoughts on it?
Well, I think that J. Willow Wilson has, in these 24 issues, she's essentially put forward her own version of Poison Ivy, and this series has been successful enough that this is going to become. It's not going to be one of those stories that's ignored, because that's happened. When writers tell terrible stories, future writers ignore them, and DC editorial doesn't care. This has been a successful series. This is one that's sold relatively well. It's had stable sales, and it's managed to, despite even myself and I believe the same extent to you as well, it's slowly sort of won me over to J. Willow Wilson's interpretation of the character. I still prefer Poison Ivy as evil and as an eco-terrorist, but this does make her sort of, I guess, an anti-hero. I mean, even the power of the green that resurrects Ivy in this issue, I thought it was very, very intentionally worded, that this power that resurrected Poison Ivy that is not identified tells Pamela, we've met before, Pamela Isley. It's getting repetitive, honestly. You're one of the troublesome ones. And I think that about covers it. So Pamela Isley, I guess, is clearly, she's both villain and hero and anti-hero. She's all three. She's one of the troublesome ones for the green. The green prefers order. This entity of the green that is unidentified tells that because living things need order, rules, categories, it makes them feel safe. Pamela Isley is a wild card, and there's this entity jokingly tells Pamela, stop, don't throw mushrooms into the bargain in the future. Don't mess with the Lamia spores. There are certain, you got to do things a certain way. So sort of a polite scolding of Pamela Isley saying, don't do this. So I thought that was kind of comical. I thought it was a little bit convenient that she could just sort of resurrect herself. But then, look, I mean, she's basically a female version of Swamp Thing, but far more attractive. mean, that's what she is. She's basically Swamp Thing. That's really what she is. She's a female Swamp Thing, straight up. She can die and she's going to come back. She's immortal for all intents and purposes. I mean, she can always come back. That's how I read this. And that's how I feel it's a little bit of a cop-out. I do feel that over 24 issues, we got 4 story arcs with identical storylines. Every single storyline was the same. Lamia spores, death, almost on the branch, almost on the edge of being defeated. She overcomes it. Second story arc, Lamia spores. She's on the edge. She overcomes it. Third story. I mean, it's been repetitive, the same story arc, but in between, I will say we got some good character work. Janet from HR was a surprisingly interesting character that I actually like. I can't believe it. And there's actually some sexual, there was some sexual three-ways going on here, which were actually kind of comical and not too provocative, but interesting and funny. And we even got a new character. I can't remember the name of the new character, but it's irrelevant. We actually got a new interesting origin for Pamela Isley that sort of connects her with Alec Holland, with Jason Woodrow, with the Gardener, which I think is a mixed bag. I don't know if I necessarily like the fact that all those characters are mixed in with the same origins vis-a-vis each other. To me, it takes away from their uniqueness. But on the other hand, not necessarily, because the story actually, it kind of worked. And so at the end of the day, I got to give J. Willow Wilson props. I was very negative when this series began. And over the 24 issues, I've sort of bought into it. I still want my Pamela Isley to be evil. I wish that her relationship with Harley was far more dysfunctional, because it ought to be. These are both mentally ill individuals. I still say Harley Quinn is mentally ill, psychotic, or at least my iteration of Harley is. There's no way that these two should be having a functional relationship by any metric. I think as a writer, I wish more writers would have more fun with exploiting what has to be the most dysfunctional relationship in comic books, namely this lesbian relationship between Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. But, I think that's inevitable, because these two are definitely not meant for each other in my mind. And, that's definitely an opinion that many, many people might disagree with me on, but so be it. I find myself compelled to recommend this series because I think in its own twisted way, I think it's entertaining. J. Willow Wilson's done a good job. This does feel like an ending. I'm actually contemplating, should I stop collecting this series because I don't need to continue to collect it. But in a day and age where people complain about successful series ending, I kind of like the idea of this series continuing as opposed to stopping it and then renumbering it in September. Keep this going. It's DC, you got a successful character here. Regardless of my minor criticisms, the fact is you've got an audience for this character. It resonates with fans, at least most of them. Keep this going. And it looks like they're going to, I guess. So.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it continuing, and I'm glad it is as well, is because in a lot of ways, and you kind of alluded to it, it's been the same thing of these 24 issues. Like, it's been one long story of, where's Poison Ivy? She's infected with a Lamia spore. She's dying when the series first starts, like in issue 1. And in issue 23, it takes her 23 issues to finally die. And now in issue 24, she's resurrected. So I am curious, and I do hope that after issue 25, which is sort of a celebration of who Poison Ivy is, that in 26 we do get something different. We do get a different feel, a different mission. Will she be teaming up with Harley? In a lot of ways, and I've talked about this before with the series and how G. Willow Wilson has fleshed out Pamela Isley and made her a more complete character, as opposed to feeling a little more two-dimensional in the past, which is always sort of a risk you run when you take a character from the Silver Age, when things were much more black and white and characters were less complicated and storytelling was expected to be less complicated back then. So she certainly has breathed fresh life into her. I sort of like the fact that it's a bunch of the plant-based heroes that all had origins that were kind of tied into each other. I kind of enjoy that. But yeah, I'm very curious to see, okay, what happens now though? Where does it go from here when we get the new story arc with issue 26? We'll have to wait and see. Okay, on to the last book we're going to talk about in detail. There are two stories here. Um, the main story, I guess we'll call it the main story, by Chip Zdarsky. It's called Be Better. It's Batman 150. Dennis Cowan and Jorge Jimenez are the artists. John Stanizzi on inks, Tomeo Mora on colors, and Clayton Cowell on letters. And then there's the second story, also by Chip Zdarsky, Brick by Brick, that ties into Absolute Power. Mike Hawthorne handles the pencils on that. Adriano Di Benedetto, his longtime inker. Romulo Fajardo Jr. handling colors, and Clayton Cowell on letters. So let's start with the main story. I thought it was very heartfelt. I thought it was really well done. When when Chip Zdarsky wants, he can inject so much emotion into a story. He did it time and time again on his Daredevil run, and we're seeing it a lot here. So basically, we're at a point where this guy tying back into his own Gotham War, Batman versus Catwoman. So this is one of the cat burglars that was trained by Selina Kyle, and he went out on the prowl, and he was taking out a lot of or going and trying to rob a lot of well-to-do citizens. Now this is where it sort of falls apart a little bit, right? Like, well, I thought that Bruce didn't have Wayne Manor anymore, but apparently this guy went in to rob Wayne Manor, or maybe actually never says Wayne Manor. Maybe it was the brownstone that he had, downtown that we saw in Detective Comics during the Mariko Tamaki run. But either way, he discovers that Bruce Wayne and Batman are one and the same. He realizes how valuable that information is, and he's trying to sell it, whether that be to Two-Face or Penguin or the Penguin's kids or whomever, right? He's trying to sell it. He's trying to find out how he can basically make a quick buck off of this. And it doesn't exactly go his way. It doesn't go as he might hope it would. But what's interesting is, in a way, Batman almost channeling Clark Kent, maybe Superman's better angels kind of got to Batman. He sets up the kid's son with a scholarship at Gotham State University so that he won't follow in the same footsteps of his father, because he's already headed down that path. And he's there for the guy. He's like, yeah, you need to leave town. He doesn't, kill him. Not that you would expect him to, but he doesn't incarcerate him. He doesn't take him to Zatanna to have his memory wiped or whatever. He really has empathy for this guy, because this guy realizes that the information he has, it's valuable, but it's more valuable if he's not if he tells somebody, and then whoever he tells, like if he tells the Penguin's kids, and the Penguin's kids are going to wipe him out, right? Because the Penguin's kids don't know who else this guy's going to tell, even if he says, hey, I'm only telling you, you're paying me, and what have you. So it's a very heartfelt story, a very impactful story. And I enjoyed it. Like, I knew the premise of the story. I thought, that might be okay. It was better than I expected it to be. It was really, really done quite well. The art from Dennis Cowan, and sorry, who else handled the art on it? I forgot. I thought it was okay. Jorge Jimenez. Yeah, I thought it was okay. It's not the best I've seen from either of these artists. I think they've done better work in the past. But it served its purpose. This was a good story. I enjoyed it. What do you think?
Yeah, it was a good enough story. But it's not good enough for Batman issue 150. I'll say that. This was what a misplay by DC editorial to put an issue that barely has Batman in it. Is it a good enough story? Well, it's okay, I guess. It was an interesting plot point at the end of Gotham War, where this one of the thieves trained by Selina discovers that Bruce Wayne is Batman. I thought something was going to come of it, but and this is what's come of it. And I guess it is a heartfelt story, and it has a resolution. But of all the plot points that we were left that were dangling at the end of this last rung with Failsafe, I did not need a whole story dedicated, all these pages on this story. All the other storylines were almost all of them were more interesting to me than this one. But look, if I'm reviewing the story that's told, number one, it's good to see Dennis Cowan's art. Although I admit, it's got to tell you, this is probably the weakest I've seen Dennis Cowan's art. I remember him fondly from the Question series, but this isn't as good. Um, but I guess age affects everybody. It's just, it's just the way it is. But it's okay. The story is heartfelt. I agree with you. Chip Zardasky does a good job here. This is a heartfelt story, and it actually, to use that phrase that annoys everybody nowadays, it did subvert my expectation. Finally, a guy actually doesn't use his knowledge for ill-gotten gains. He basically he says he strives to be a better man because of the role model that Batman helped his son, and encourages him to be a better man as well. Be better, be better. And so it's a good story. I was really hoping more for Batman 150, especially leading into the absolute power. But we got that with the backup story, which I loved. I loved the backup story, which frankly should absolutely have been the main story, and it could have been. You should have had the backup story. Should have had more real estate given to it, because the story here that we just finished reviewing, it didn't need to be as long as it was. It didn't need to be that long. But in any event, share your thoughts on the backup.
Yeah, I agree with you. It could have been the main story could have been a little shorter, and it still would have got the same point across. In reference to not worthy of a Batman 150, so not worthy of a Batman anniversary issue, I completely agree with you. But just to play devil's advocate here, the other part of that though is like, man, how many anniversary issues, anthologies, oversized, blah blah blah. It's kind of nice not to have a bloated 150 and just have what I consider two solid stories. It seems like I enjoyed the first one more than you did. As far as the backup goes, I like the analogy. It starts off with Bruce talking about how when one of the first things he did when he got his fortune after his parents died was he bought the gun manufacturer that made the gun that killed his parents, and he dismantled that factory. We're told brick by brick. It's a brick building, and thus the title, Brick by Brick. And now he's in the midst of this absolute power story, has to find a way to build or to destroy the gun that he built. Right, he brought his own gun into the world by creating Failsafe, and now Amanda Waller has Failsafe, and he's got to figure out how to stop it. And he thinks the key to stopping Waller is Cyborg. Cyborg is the one that's going to be able to take down the Amazo robots. Cyborg's the one that can get them information that they need on what Waller's plans are and what have you. And Cyborg is the one that does inform them that the power source that Amanda Waller is using, which is somewhere in Mora, is a mother box. So Rocky alluded to it earlier when we were talking about Absolute Power 1, that it seems like what Batman is going to do is he's going to recruit Catwoman to try to steal this mother box. That's their plan. So to varying degrees of success, I imagine that it'll work to varying degrees of success. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, overall, this was a pretty strong story. What are your thoughts on it?
One of the coolest aspects of this backup story is I love how Flash is used as the communicator. Flash is moving so unbelievably fast. He's literally it's so well done that you could, the way Flash is relaying the messages word for word from Batman to Diana to Cyborg to all the other heroes. It's very, very well done. I'm curious as to why Flash still has his powers. I'm assuming it's because that connection to the Speed Force is fairly powerful, that it's something that Amanda Waller is still working on. But I find it it's very, very interesting. And I like the fact, I think what's very well done here by Chip Zardasky is the fact that Batman feels guilty because he created the weapon of Failsafe. And Failsafe is the gun that is harming people, and it's created ultimately by him. And Well, frankly, he's absolutely right. It is, and he should feel a little bit guilty. And what I particularly liked about this, and frankly, I feel this should have been this should have been an absolute. This shouldn't have been. This story should have been an absolute power number one. I think because straight up, I screwed up when we were reviewing Absolute Power number one, and I was giving my quick synopsis of it. I I I talked about this plot line. I confused this plot line. I integrated this plot line with Absolute Power number one because to me it goes in so seamlessly. It's this event. I like this event. I got to give Mark Waid overall, and Mark Waid is the architect. But I really like how all the pieces are coming together here. It's cool. Mark Waid is really good at putting plots together and weaving plots and making it all sort of be cohesive. And he was decent at that even with Lazarus Planet, even though I wasn't a big fan of the concept itself. The way he weaved everything together, it did make sense, and it works here. I also love the fact that Mark Waid is avoiding, and I know Chip Zardasky wrote this backup, but Mark Waid as a whole, it's very clear here that Mark Waid is avoiding one of the biggest pitfalls of what DC has had in their big events, and that is the Duke Ex Machina ending. As if I love the fact that Batman naively thinks that, oh yeah, all we got to do is I just got to get Cyborg. I got to give a mother box to Cyborg, and then all our problems with Amanda Waller is going to go away. No, that ain't going to happen. This is an event. Amanda Waller is smarter than that. She's maybe even smarter than you are this time around, Batman. And I like that central conceit that finally the villains here, or the heroes here, are up against a mastermind, Amanda Waller, that is, whether we accept her as a mastermind or not, the fact is she's certainly written that way now. She knows what the hell she's doing. She's got her bases covered, and it's going to take more than a cyborg, more than a mother box, more than control of more than just getting power over magic back, more than even maybe getting your superpowers back to defeat her. I feel the stakes here, and I really like this backup for doing that. And I just feel it should have been part of. I feel that this is, I don't know, like I was going to say, maybe not essential reading, but I think you'd definitely want to read this Batman backup in conjunction with Absolute Power. But the big misfire here is taking that first story. Having that first story be first on this is a big mistake. Again, it's not, people are going to buy this Batman issue because it's 150 anyway. But boy, oh boy, I think that a lot of people are going to be disappointed because that Dennis Cowan art is such a jarring change, and it's the tone of that first story is so completely at odds with this backup going into Absolute Power. It's just it's an editorial misfire. But leaving aside that, as stories, both stories are good.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know if I agree about it needing to be in but I mean, I take your point. I don't mind. I mean, because it does harken again back to classic events, having it tie in, it says Absolute Power right across the top, whatever, it's a tie in. But on the other hand, Cyborg is so important that, maybe, and who knows, maybe it will be alluded to, this issue will be alluded to in Absolute Power number 2. They'll say, go read Batman 150 as they start planning out the mission or what have you. So, all right, that does it for single issues that we're going to chat about. There's one other single issue, the Batman and Scooby-Doo Mystery Season 3, issue number 7 is also out this week. And then in terms of trade, we have Wonder Woman Volume 1 Outlaw trade paperback. There's a regular version and a direct market version. The regular version has Daniel Sampere cover art. The direct market version has Art Germ cover art. But either way, you're getting 1 through 6 of the current Tom King, Daniel Sampere Wonder Woman run. Also, for the first time, I don't know if we ever talked about this on the show, but DC has a new format that they're releasing books in. It's called Compact Comics. They're much smaller. They give it more like 5 inches by 7 inches rather than the larger size that's 8.5 by 11. So We've got All-Star Superman, the whole thing, issues 1 through 10 or 1 through 12, whatever it was. And then also Far Sector, the Joe Mullen story. So that collects 1 through 12 of Far Sector. That's out this week. Very good story. And then obviously All-Star Superman. I mean, that series is so good. Those 12 issues are so good that even though it's written by Grant Morrison, it's still one of my favorite Superman stories. It's like the one Grant Morrison book or project or whatever that I really, really enjoy. So it just captures the heart of who Superman is so, so well. So check those out if you're so inclined. Again, it's a smaller format, easier to carry around, easier to read on the bus or what have you. We also have Red Hood and the Outlaws, Volume 2 trade paperback. This is the series that was written by Patrick R. Young, art by Nico Baskinen, and it's the webtoon. The webtoon episodes 12 through 22. That series is doing really, really well on webtoon. And we also have Vixen NYC, which is also a webtoon series with it doesn't have the creators on here for some reason. But anyway, it collects episodes 47 through 52 of the Vixen webtoon. And then finally, JSA, The Golden Age, is also having a trade paperback release. Collects the Golden Age 1 through 4. That's the James Robinson JSA story. James Robinson, fantastic at writing Golden Age characters, modernizing them, but still making them feel classic. So that does it for collections. Pick of the week, Rocky. I guess we know what yours is.
Well, mine was fairly straightforward. I'm going with Absolute Power #1. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I also enjoyed it in conjunction with the backup, the Batman backup as well. But I thought this is what I want. This is how big events should start off. Start off with a bang. We immediately know the stakes. We know who the bad guy is. We know how desperate the heroes are. We know that they're in big trouble, and even as a longtime reader, I'm at a loss to figure out how they're going to get out of this one. And that's what I love. And so I'm having a lot of fun with it, and it's really nice to have a DC big event. This is the first DC big event. I got to be honest. I'm trying to remember the last time I enjoyed a DC event as much as this. I'd have to go back probably to, oh boy, maybe Infinite Crisis. It's been a long time since I enjoyed I feel like, because most of the time big events just suck, but I'd have to go back to Infinite Crisis to find an event that I enjoyed this much from DC. What about yourself?
I thought you liked Beast World. I mean, it started off.
Beast World is nothing. Beast World's okay, but it's still the height of mediocrity for me.
Yeah, I think it started off strong and it kind of petered out. But I mean, I have to. And this isn't so much an endorsement of Absolute Power #1 as it is sort of I guess, an indictment in a way of the rest of the books, because nothing else really jumped out at me. Like I would probably be able to pick JSA if it wasn't for all the constant delays and knowing that there's only 2 issues left, and it's like, what's the point? But because of the impact and because of that incredible line, she's rolling tanks, and because of the the different Amazo robots that we're going to see, for so many reasons, I'm picking Absolute Power. And I probably would be just as excited as you, maybe even more so, if it just wasn't for the fact that it's Waller. That's the one thing that brings it down for me, because I just can't stand that character. Like I was saying when I was reviewing it, if this was Maxwell Lord, oh man, I would just be all over it. I would be all over it. But yeah, because it's Waller, it diminishes the joy of it for me a little bit. But again, so great to see an event of this magnitude. I have total faith in Mark Waid that he's going to give us a great story and a great event. And on top of that, as he said a couple things that I'll mention. We're telling you so much that what he said, you guys don't even need to go and listen to him. And we teased a lot of it last time because we didn't want to spoil Absolute Power 1. Now we can talk a little more freely about what he said. A couple of things I'll point out. he gets to call the shots on a lot of the things that the consequences that happen after absolute power. So that's what helps make this feel like an event that's going to matter more, because he's the one that's going to, be scripting or be show running a lot of the story, kind of taking over the role from Joshua Williamson. A lot of the story and direction of where DC heads, probably not for the absolute line. If rumors are to be believed, that's more on the Scott Snyder kind of level of influence. But even again, if the rumors are to be believed, the rumors on that is Snyder's giving the creators that are involved in that a little more carte blanche to just do whatever they want to do, which makes sense to me. Scott's a veteran at this point, and it's just like, you know what, I trust you. Go do your thing. He knows better than to micromanage. But for the main DCU, it feels like Mark Waid's going to be calling a lot of the shots. So again, it helps make it feel like this event's going to matter. The events are going to matter, and it's going to be cool because they're going to have long-running consequences. And kind of going hand in hand with that, something I didn't think about until Mark mentioned it. He's like, I'm not going to lie to you. We're going to get back to the sort of, he didn't say it exactly like this, but more to the classic DCU, because you can do the whole society has distrust of, DC heroes or what have you, but that doesn't work as well in the DC universe as it might work in some other universes, some other shared superhero universes, because that's just not the point of the DC universe. Like there's this sort of inherent trust that the public has with the heroes, which is why it's sort of hard to believe that they would buy into the bullshit Amanda's doing with the deep fakes or whatever. But one of the things he did mention is that just because the heroes get their powers back doesn't mean everybody gets their powers back. And it doesn't mean when they get their powers back that their powers work in the same way. That opens up so much story and so much potential. And any hero that you think, their powers are wonky or they don't, really work in the way they should, or, it's a real chance to, reinvent some of these heroes for a new generation. Like somebody that immediately comes to mind is like Firestorm, right? Like it would be fantastic to see Firestorm have a little bit more of a prominent role. He's a character from the 80s that I really miss, had a long ongoing series and what have you. Another one that comes to mind, sort of similar to that, is Blue Devil. They've pushed Blue Devil over into the magic corner of the DCU. I don't like that. I liked him when he was sort of the weirdness magnet, but it wasn't so tied into to magic and what have you, because it goes back to something that Rocky said earlier on the podcast, which is this idea of using magic as a get out of jail free card for writers. I don't care for that. That's why I've never liked magic in comics. So anyway, for all those reasons, I got to pick Absolute Power. Really excited to see where it goes next. So anything else to add, Rock?
It's very, very interesting to hear that some of these heroes might not be getting their powers back, or they're going to have a twist on them. We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, we kind of got a little bit of that maybe with the Lazarus planet. So, I mean, we know what happens when you do it wrong, because we all unfortunately had to experience Lazarus planet, and we never got, I don't think we got a single interesting character out of that event. I hope that DC doesn't squander this opportunity. And, we'll have to see. I choose to be optimistic because, what choice do we have? But, in Waid, I trust. In Mark Waid, I trust, and hopefully we'll, like I said, he's really good at teasing, and he's definitely whet our appetites in terms of what maybe, in terms of contemplating what could happen in the DC universe moving forward. Because look, we're going to have presumably an exciting Ultimate DC universe under Snyder. And Mark Waid, I mean, I like the fact that there's a little bit of competition there. That's what I'm perceiving. A little bit of competition. Mark Waid's got to read the writing on the wall. Mark Waid's got to know that he's in charge of DC now. He finally has his wish. He's been wanting to do this for such a long time. He's at the top of the game. Top of his game, arguably. He can call the shots. He can write whatever he wants pretty much for DC. And now he's leading this big event into a new mainstream, revitalized, more classic DC universe alongside a brand new Ultimate DC universe that probably more people are excited about an Ultimate DC universe than the mainstream. I'll be blunt. I am. I'm looking forward to more of and it's because of the success of the Ultimate line at Marvel, and maybe
Yeah,
that
but
reasoning.
you gotta stop calling it the Ultimate. It's
Well,
absolute.
no, absolute. Well, they can. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, my bad. It's
Don't don't
absolute
don't, don't
DC.
taint DC with Marvel's BS right now. Like Marvel books right now are so bad. I'm sorry. I hate to call
Well, I
anybody
agree,
out.
but not their Ultimate line. So that's not tainting
Yeah,
DC.
yeah.
But
Their
I
Ultimate line
understand what
is
you mean.
yeah. Their Ultimate line is much more enjoyable. But God, their books right. Like recently, I don't know if you guys. I mean, we don't typically talk about Marvel on this particular podcast, but yeah, their publisher came out. Yeah, I really want to get it to the point where we're doing 10 or 12 issue runs, not 4 or 5 or 6. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Give me some long
Yeah,
form storytelling. You're
yeah,
telling me that you can't sell books with the number higher than 12? You know, Todd McFarlane's Spawn is doing great and it's in the 360s. So I don't know what you're
yeah.
smoking, dude.
And at
The guy's
$2.99.
yeah, guy's just an idiot. Dan Buckley, you're a moron. You are if you these movies that make billions of dollars and you can't figure out how to sell the comics with the same characters in them, then you, sir, are a moron. I'm sorry. I don't know him. I only know of him. But yeah, not somebody that I would have any faith in whatsoever, steering Marvel into the ground. And the only reason it still sells is basically name recognition, and you know the whole idea of Marvel zombies that are used to you know picking up Marvel books every week. I still pick up a couple Marvel books, but it's more yeah. I mean I'm guilty of it too. Like it's more out of habit than the fact that the stories are any good. So I will say as far as Lazarus Planet and Waid We Trust, you know Mark Waid did Lazarus Planet and it didn't turn out to be so good. There was a lot of chefs in that kitchen though, and one of the things that gives me more confidence in this is that you know he's the final say. He is the head chef, so I feel like this is going to you know work on a lot better level. And you know you talked about coming out on the other side and having absolute universe or whatever. I'm very curious to see what that is, but I wouldn't say I'm more excited than I am for the main line because what I expect. You know, we know currently in Action Comics, Williamson's finishing up his Superman run. In Action Comics, we're getting like this all-star thing. You know, we got Jason Aaron. Then we had Williamson do his House of Brainiac. Next up, we're going to have a Gail Simone story arc for a few months. Coming out of that, she's going to be done right around the time this event ends. We finally get Mark Waid on Action Comics. I will be way more excited to see Mark Waid on Action Comics than I will for any absolute line, depending on who the Superman writer is. You know, we've only heard rumors for any kind of absolute. So
I would love to have that dilemma. If I look forward to the day where I have to make the decision: do I read Action Comics first or absolute Batman or absolute Wonder Woman? I mean, those are first world problems that I want to have for DC come September, October, what have you, and moving forward. That would be awesome.
yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like if you know we've mentioned Ultimate Line or whatever, you can't help but make the comparison. It seems like you know that's what they're doing. It's new continuity. It's you know rebooting for new readers, what have you. I think back to the Earth One line that they did, where it was Geoff Johns doing Batman with Gary Frank on art, and it was a completely different Batman, still Bruce Wayne or whatever, but completely different origin, what have you. And it was J. Michael Straczynski with Shane Davis on the Earth One Superman. Like those were great. Like I would like it if those had continued, but and they were you know graphic novels. They came out in long form story, one a year for a little while. We got 3 volumes of the Superman, 2 volumes of the Batman. They were great. So if it's that sort of stuff, I'm all in for it. But we know Shane Davis is not going to, you know, he's over there, lost his mind with Comicsgate. Obviously, Geoff Johns and Gary Frank have moved on to Ghost Machine or whatever. I guess JMS could still do Superman. I haven't heard his name among the rumors, but like that's what this Ultimate Line needs to be. Obviously, they'll be tied together. But yeah, a lot of hope, a lot of excitement for it. So we'll see how it all turns out. Well, super long episode, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Reminder about the interview with Matt Kint and his mom. I also want to mention that if you're a Star Trek fan, what IDW is doing with the Star Trek line right now is absolutely fantastic. They have 2 books that tie together: Star Trek Defiant. Star Trek's written by the hive mind of Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. Star Trek Defiant by Christopher Cantwell, friend of the show. Had a chance to talk to those three in an episode interview last week. It's available on YouTube. And then the following day, I talked to Morgan Hampton, who we loved his Cyborg series. We reviewed it here on the DC Spotlight. He did a Sons of Superman 4-issue series. The 4th issue came out today. It was absolutely fantastic. So that was great as well. Go check out those interviews if you're so inclined. And as we're winding down, finishing up here, Rocky, I have to ask. You said maybe the reason that you weren't as excited for the DC books this week is because there were so many great independent books. If I put you on the spot and ask you to give us a couple of those titles, maybe somebody else is tired of DC, needs something indie to read. What were the ones, any specific come to mind that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, it was Sacrificers number 10 by Image, Red Coat number 3, Rook issue 3 by Ghost Machine. There was Dawn Runner issue 4. That might have come out last week. Nottingham issue 12 by Mad Cave. The Wrong Earth issue 4 by Ahoy Comics. Wrong Earth Dead Ringers. And those are the. I actually enjoyed Mercy by Todd McFarlane. It was a sort of a Spawn spinoff. Again, $2.99, probably the best price point. Todd McFarlane's really, hitting it out of the park. I'm slowly getting more and more into the Spawn universe. So, yeah, those are ones which every single one that I stated, with the exception of I did read Absolute Power number 1. That was on top of my pile list. So DC did have one on top of my must read list this week, but the rest were all indie, and those were the ones that I read, and that's not even counting. You gave me I've read Destro number 1. I'm looking forward to G.I. Joe. I mean, the Energon universe is really good. Void Rivals. I've read every issue of those. Void Rivals. I've got a nice Energon collection here. The Energon universe has its own comic book box. I have it for it. It's awesome. I got a lot of second, third, and fourth printings because I can't seem to get the first printings because they sell out so quick. But I don't care. Give me any printing of the Energon universe. They've done pretty well. And the second issue of Scarlet by Kelly Thompson. I enjoyed her first issue. She's really, reading Scarlet. I wouldn't mind if she was going to write Wonder Woman at some point, which is, I know, just a rumor mill. I'd be willing to check that out. So again, it's everything I just rattled off, guys. I mean, look. Say what we will, we complain a little bit about the delay on Justice Society with Geoff Johns, but Ghost Machine, really the creative talent pool on that. Anything by Ghost Machine, pick it up because you won't be disappointed. And you can even pick up the hardcover of Junkyard Joe, I think, which just came out, and they're just firing on all cylinders, and that's because quality talent matters. It pays. It definitely shows with Ghost Machine and the Energon universe, Image, and other Image titles. So I could go on, but that would be a separate podcast.
Yeah, a lot of those books you mentioned they came out last week, but some of them this week. But I mean, I don't disagree. The big book out for me this week. I did a whole giant reread of all the Star Trek stuff before I interviewed all those guys. That was great, just reminding me of how good it is. But the other reread I'm in the middle of right now, when you want to talk about independent books, is Kyle Higgins' Massive Verse, right, with Ryan Parrott and a bunch of other creators, with Radiant Black and Radiant Pink and all that, because the end of the Catalyst War is coming. So issue 29 and 29.5 of that are out this week. Which I read, and they're just so good. They're so amazing. So, yeah, plenty of great independent books. It almost makes me wonder if we shouldn't be doing an independent spotlight and give the DC.
Well, we should. I have to say that I get a lot of my retailers always often a week, sometimes 2 weeks behind on some of the indie comics. So I probably am off by a week or two. That's just by I can't help that, but it doesn't matter. It's all for the betterment of my glory. But I have to admit, the 1 week it was insane. I had my comic book. The amount I paid for comics that 1 week was far too much because I had a huge pile of comics.
I've had those weeks where it's like $200. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Like
it's
I
like
order,
crazy.
I mail order most of my stuff, and then then there's other stuff that I get, because I want variant covers or something I missed
Yeah.
on my order at the time.
And I picked up volume 2 of Something Is Killing the Children, volume 2. And so, because I love that, I'm still following that, and I even picked up. I'm enjoying Brian Bendis. I'm enjoying something from Brian Bendis, Joy Operation. Like I got the first story. This is the beginning of the issue 1 of that's fine. It's Joy Operations Part 2, issue 1. I'm enjoying that. It's yeah. So even I'm even enjoying Bendis. Bendis is I enjoy him more when he does independent titles, and he's got another one too whose name I can't quite remember, but I'm reading quite a bit. Also, Ain't No Grave, a Western by Image. I'm really enjoying that as well. By
that's
Scotty Young.
Scotty Young, right?
Yeah, Scotty Young. Yeah, it's really good. So many great independent titles right now. It's crazy, and honestly, no disrespect to DC or Marvel, but I mean, the indie scene right now is so hot. It just can't be beat.
Yep, 100%. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. San Diego Comic-Con coming up at the end of the month. Be sure you're following the Comic Source on all social media and what have you. I'll have a ton of interviews, pictures, what have you from the convention. So haven't gotten too many things scheduled yet. A lot of people have reached out, and I've said, yes, I'll do it, and then just waiting to hear back from them. The only thing on my schedule that's like firm right now are parties, right? Like I have an AWA launch party to go to. I have the fandom party after that. I have the bad idea party. So not a bad position to be in.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff, other stuff will fill. I have some really big news. When I'm able to announce it, I will let you know. It's a huge person that I'm going to be interviewing. So look forward to that. So anyway, if you're listening to us audio only, don't forget, head over to YouTube, subscribe to Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom! Once you're there, you know what to do. Ring the notification bell. Subscribe so you're sure not to miss any episodes, and give us your thoughts on Absolute Power #1 in the comments. We love, or any of the books, really. We love engaging in the comment section. You can find the Comic Source content over on the Comic Source YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, do a search for the Comic Source. If you prefer to listen to things audio only, you're driving, you're on the subway, whatever, you can go to the Comic Source podcast feed to check out all the content as well. Just go to wherever you get your podcast, your favorite platform, your favorite app, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you joining as always, and we will talk to you next time.
Catch you later.